This is the first time I've ever seen yakisoba with a poached egg injected with the umami of shrimp. This is a flavor bomb for sure, and we cannot deny the three of them really put in the work on this one. The first episode of the new Food Wars season is a beach episode, and we're having yakisoba, and now we gotta stuff oil into a poached egg, but it just doesn't feel quite right yet. There we go. That feels a little bit better. Still really cold, but it's a beach episode. The umami shrimp olive oil. Now, I did have to use shrimp paste for this simply because I didn't have access to shrimp shells. I went around to a couple purveyors and no one really had anything for me to buy, so we're also going to add in some paprika to our shrimp paste to give it that beautiful red oil. Keep in mind that shrimp paste is really strong, so we're only going to be using about 1 tablespoon worth of this shrimp paste. To this, we're going to add about 3 tablespoons worth of your paprika, followed by 1/2 cup of olive oil. You want to make sure that you stir this really well to break down any of that shrimp paste. You don't want any big chunks of shrimp paste in there, it's just not going to taste good, so when you bring it over the flame, also whisk it really hard. We're going to cook this for about 5 to 6 minutes until you see your oil start to sizzle. That's when you want to turn it off, otherwise the oil can burn and become bitter. We're going to let this rest for a few minutes while we get our cheesecloth ready. Now, you can also do this with a coffee filter if you would like. I just didn't have any, but I did have some cheesecloth. Put your cheesecloth into whatever cup or bowl you want and strain out all of this liquid. The goal is to get this oil as clean as possible and free of any sediment that could potentially block the needle that you're using. Since I'm going to be using a very small needle, I need to make sure that this is really clean. Try to wring this out so that way you can get as much oil as possible out of this cheesecloth. Now we have this beautiful red shrimp paste paprika oil infusion thing. Now for the vegetables that they'd use, it was cabbage, tomatoes, and onions. So for the cabbage, we're just going to give this a nice chop. You don't have to do anything too fancy with it because we're going to do this in a wok. If your cabbage is actually too thin and you use a very high heat cooking method, it will wilt faster than you would like. So we're going to do the same thing with the onion. Now, you don't need to use all of this onion, but I'm going to have this chopped up just in case I want to use quite a bit of it. I'm going to give this somewhat of a large dice in the same way I cut up the cabbage. Now for the tomato, I'm actually using a steak or a hothouse tomato just because they would hold up a little bit better to the high heat of the wok. We're going to dice this the same way we did the other two vegetables. We're not doing anything super fancy here. The juice from this tomato seeds is going to help the umami of the dish overall, so we're going to keep those. Now we have our cabbage, our onions, and our tomatoes done. Now, they didn't talk about this in the anime, but it's not yakisoba without yakisoba sauce. So for this yakisoba sauce, we're going to use 3 tablespoons worth of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons worth of worcestershire, 1 tablespoon worth of oyster sauce. Hopefully we can get enough of this oyster sauce. Come on, you can do it. Get out. That's enough. We're also going to add in 2 tablespoons worth of your ketchup of choice. This is going to help give a good amount of tang to the overall sauce. I like my yakisoba a little tangy, but if you want at this point, you can add a little bit of sugar. Just give it a taste and make sure it's how you like it. Good job. Now for the final piece, the calamari. I could only find sashimi grade calamari locally. I wouldn't recommend using sashimi grade calamari because it is really expensive, but that's all we could find. In your pan of choice, I'm going to be using a wok for this. Heat up a little bit of oil, and then we're going to actually throw out that oil once it starts smoking, and then add in a touch more, and this is going to help it stay non-stick. Go ahead and dump in your calamari right into that and give it a nice fry. Calamari cooks very quickly, so you want to make sure you don't overcook this. Season it with a little bit of salt before we add in our squid ink. I used 1 full pack of this squid ink. It came out to about 1/4 of an ounce. Go ahead and continue to saute this together until you completely coat the calamari with that squid ink. Now we're going to go ahead and deglaze everything with a little bit of white wine. You don't want to use too much of this, otherwise you start to stew the calamari. Go ahead and try to burn off any excess alcohol, and once all of the liquid has evaporated, this is ready to go. Take all of this out of your pan and place it into a separate bowl to be part of your mise en place for when we actually start cooking the rest of the yakisoba. And make sure you clean this pan, otherwise that squid ink will be in everything. Now, before we get ready to actually cook this thing off and get to our shokugeki portion, I just want to say thank you guys for understanding that some ingredients just might not be available, and we do have to substitute where we can. Now to start things off, add in your oil to your pan, followed by your onions and your cabbage. Yes, the onions look a little bit different because honestly, I had some I had to use first. Hit this with a little bit of salt and pepper. And while that's getting all nice over there, we're going to drop an egg into your pot of water to start poaching it so these can be ready around the same time. You don't really want to have one ready before the other, so everything is nice and hot. Now we're going to go ahead and add in our yakisoba noodles. These are wheat noodles. Hold up. we need to talk about the yakisoba. For those of us who don't actually have a pasta roller like me, store-bought yakisoba noodles are delicious. They typically come in packs that are fresh with a little bit of oil, so just use some really hot water to break them up. Get these totally strained and free of any liquid. Now we can drop in our yakisoba noodles directly into our wok and get these nice and stirred up. Don't forget about your egg after about 3 to 4 minutes. I like to go to about 4 minutes for my poached eggs. At this point, halfway through the cooking process, I like to add in a little bit more oil to start getting more of a texture on my noodles and my vegetables. After you get some color on your noodles and vegetables, hit it with just about half of your yakisoba sauce. You don't want to put in too much initially, you can always adjust that later. Once your yakisoba sauce is totally incorporated, we're going to add in just about a tablespoon worth of your Squid Ink calamari. The reason for this is because that Squid Ink is so strong that it can overpower the color of the noodles. Get this thing gently tossed up and grab yourself your favorite plate. This isn't actually my favorite plate. We gave my favorite plate to the neighbors with some cake. That's irrelevant. Go ahead and pile up as much of your noodles as you want. Honestly, I'm just using all of this, followed by your freshly poached egg. Be very careful with this because the yolk is going to be incredibly soft and runny. And now for the coup de grace, we have to fill up this really, really tiny needle with some of our oil. Now to do this, I had to actually remove the top of this and start gently pouring in some of the oil through the top. This was pretty big pain simply because you can't really get a lot of liquid into this style of a needle, but I needed the needle to be very thin so that way it wouldn't rupture the egg. Now gently puncture the top of the egg so that way it doesn't have a lot of room to move around when you start putting in oil. Be super gentle with this, take your time, don't force it in too hard. That sounded weird, and once you're done, you should have an oil-filled egg. There it is, guys, the Elite 10's yakisoba. This is a culmination of everyone's efforts come together. We have all the flavors from the Elite 10 in this one package, and I will say it's pretty sad. This is supposed to be $8 worth. That's pretty damn good. Do you guys want to see this? Do you want to be in on this one? Okay. Oh, look at the red. Yes. It oozes out so much more because of all the oil in there. Oh God. I hope that was in frame. You could see some of the black ink from the squid. The reason why I didn't really try to toss it as much is because Squid Ink, honestly, the more you incorporate it, it just coats everything. So it would just been black pasta rather than, you know, not black pasta. Oh my God. Oh, the smoked paprika with the shrimp paste because we didn't have access to shrimp shells. Then with the squid cooked in that Squid Ink plus some of the white wine, and then all of your vegetables and your noodles. Listen, I know these are store-bought noodles, but they're really good. I could eat this at the beach. I don't think that would be a problem. This is delicious. What's your favorite food to have at the beach? One of mine, honestly, is tacos and margaritas because you can't go wrong. My name is Chef PK, here on Foodie Friday, bringing anime and video game food to life. Get subscribed, and remember, keep playing with your food. This is delicious. Buy my books.
Tap when I speak, all cap with the speech till they caught up in the rapture. I'm so out of line with the phrase game. Let's take a break, been a long day.